She was in your meeting.
She was in New York. Yeah. There was a separate.
I call to order this April 15th meeting of the North Allegheny School Board. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to our calendar review, we had 2 executive sessions for personnel reasons. We had one on April 13th and one just prior to this meeting. Today, we have a combined meeting, and we will also have our English Language Arts curriculum report and a proposed final budget presentation. In a couple of weeks, we will have our work session where we will have our NA Foundation Scholarship recognition and our 25-year employee recognition. Following that, on May 20th, we will have our regular voting meeting with our NA Empower annual report and contest winners and our final budget approval. Then our last meeting of the school year will be on January 3rd, and that will be a combined meeting. What did I say, July? June 3rd. School year ends in June, thank goodness. Okay. Next, we will move on to our reports. Dr. Highland.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. We have 2 reports tonight for the board. The first is the English Language Arts Curriculum Report. And first, let me say, I want to thank all the principals, all the teachers that came out to support each other, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're supporting each other. And I want to thank Mr. Rack, who's the department chair, who is going to kick this off. And I'm going to stop talking and give it to you to let you do your thing.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to share with you tonight the ELA Curriculum Review Report. So let's begin. Throughout the process of this review report, we did use the district's goals and comprehensive plan to guide the work that we did. So you'll see throughout our report references to the goals and key performance indicators that support the recommendations that we are putting forward in our report this evening. And I'd also like to introduce my presentation team. As Dr. Highland introduced me, I'm Jeremy Rack. I have the distinct pleasure of serving as the department chair for ELA, and I also teach grades 9 and 10 at NAI. I'm also joined by Dr. Marguerite Helden, who is one of our literacy coaches, Miss Kristen Zachariah, who teaches 5th grade at Marshall, and Mrs. Kristen Andreas, who is grades 7 and 8 at Ingomar Middle School. They all served on the review team and are here tonight to support this presentation and also answer any questions you may have at the end. So we'll start by talking about the needs assessment and consideration that started this process. We'll go through a list of recommendations that the department is advancing through this report, including justification for each one, performance indicators that align to the department or the district's comprehensive plan, and our action steps that will implement those recommendations through over the next several years. And then at the end, we'll have some concluding comments and time for questions. So this presentation represents the culmination of a 2-year process that began in the fall of 2024 with an internal informal needs assessment that was conducted by ELA teachers, where we reflected on program strengths and identified areas for growth. And that served as the genesis of a line of inquiry that guided the rest of the review process for the 2 years that followed, concluding tonight with 7 major recommendations that we are putting forth as part of our report. We're going to share with you 3 of those recommendations this evening. The first one is actually recommendation 2, which is that we establish a K-12 ELA curriculum framework with clearly aligned PA core standards, scope and sequence revisions, and consistent non-negotiable instructional practices across all grade levels. The idea behind this recommendation is that we ensure consistent, high-quality ELA instruction for all students. We intend to do that by implementing a clear scope and sequence that is aligned to standards and assessments that are aligned to standards and common instructional practices and goals for the entire department. This aligns with the district strategic plan, including goals 1, 2, and 3. The work for this recommendation has actually already begun as we started in this spring reviewing our current instructional practices, curriculum, and scope and sequence, looking for gaps and areas for improvement. That will continue in 26, 27 with a plan and design phase where we further the process of writing curriculum, working collaboratively across grade levels and buildings to design the most rigorous and developmentally appropriate ELA curriculum that we can. We expect to implement that curriculum in 27, 28, and also at the same time begin the process of collecting feedback from stakeholders to continually refine that curriculum in the years to come. And then in 2028 and beyond, that process of continual review, reflection, and revision of the curriculum will continue to ensure that it goes from what we anticipate to be from good to great to truly excellent over the next several years. Recommendation 3 is that we adopt comprehensive standards-aligned assessment systems with common rubrics and grading practices to support consistent, data-driven instruction across all grade levels. As we want to have a cohesive and consistent curriculum, we must match that with cohesive and consistent assessment practices across all grades and buildings. That will allow us to collect data on how well our curriculum is working to encourage growth and learning in our students. So we'll do that through common assessments that are across all courses or grades and common rubrics that are shared across teachers regardless of building or course. This recommendation aligns with the district strategic plan goals 1.3, 1.4, 2.1, and 3.4. And as with the recommendation recommendation 2, this has a 3-part phase-in process starting next year in 26-27, where we intend to establish an assessment PLC made up of ELA teachers who have a passion for this type of work, who will then identify areas of need and inconsistency in our current practices and start designing professional development and professional learning opportunities for our staff for a more consistent approach and philosophy when it comes to grading and assessment. Along with the new curriculum in 27, 28, we'll implement new assessments that are common to courses and buildings, along with rubrics that match those assessments. We'll also begin the practice of collaborative grading with teachers so that we can ensure that grading practices are consistent across buildings and grades. And then in 28 and beyond, we will sustain this work by continuing to collect data on how our students are performing through those assessments, reflecting on that data, and then making revisions to assessments and curriculum based on that data. And finally, recommendation 5 is that we establish comprehensive independent reading programs and literacy engagement strategies to build reading stamina and foster lifelong reading habits. I will tell you that this is the recommendation that the ELA department, I think, is most excited about. We believe and we know that the more one reads, the better one reads. And we are interested in establishing a culture of reading because lifelong readers are lifelong learners. So starting in, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm excited about this one. We're all excited about this one. What we intend to do is increase reading volume for students by providing protected independent reading time within their ELA day or ELA week. Students get to self-select what they read, and that independent reading in tandem with the curriculum that we are designing will increase their writing, grammar, and critical thinking skills. And this recommendation aligns with the district goals 1.4, 2.3, and 3.4. And just like the previous recommendations, we expect a 3-part phase-in process beginning next year where we'll have some teachers piloting this program in their classrooms and also establishing an independent reading PLC of teachers who have experience with independent reading programs in their previous teaching experience that will serve sort of as facilitators or leaders for the larger group to guide them through the process of implementing this program with fidelity. In 27-28, we expect full implementation across all ELA teachers in grades 6 through 12. The PLC will continue to support teachers with professional learning opportunities and will collect data from stakeholders to review the effectiveness of the program and make revisions in 2028 and beyond. So, concluding comments, some of the themes that emerge through this review and the report that we shared with the board are a focus on early literacy, aligning our assessment and curriculum practices, a need for consistency in curriculum instruction and resources, increasing student engagement through reading choice and increased independent reading time, targeted support for all learners, ongoing professional learning in curriculum, assessment, independent reading. And then that phased implementation plan, you probably noticed, looks the same for each of those recommendations, as we anticipate that it will be a sort of 3-part cycle over the next 3 years as we plan, implement, and then continue to refine and support those recommendations going forward. Before I take any questions, I'd also like to issue a heartfelt thank you to a few people who are here this evening. Dr. Heather Hibner has been a fantastic resource for this review, along with Mrs. Carla Hudson, another administrator who was integral in the work that we did, leading the high school teams and the middle school teams respectively through this process. So they were not listed in the slides, but I felt they deserve recognition for the work that they did. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rath.
Mr. Swager, how did I do on time?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, good.
All right.
Thank you.
Well done.
I have a tendency to be verbose, so.
There's other people in this room who have the same problem. Thank you to you and your team. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments? Dr. Adams.
Just a comment. Congratulations. Good work to you and your team. And you give a very good presentation. Energetic, clear, to the point. I think there's got to be a lot of presentations in your future. So somebody should make a note of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you do a good job.
Thank you very much. It's the English teacher in me.
Dr. Gibbs.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Warner. Very nice presentations, but I have a couple of questions.
Please.
So first I want to say some of the things that I like a lot about what you were talking about, this idea of implementing common assessments, rubrics, having collaborative grading in order to create consistency, and will also help those teachers that maybe are less familiar with the goals to become more familiar and to help each other to build their competencies on this. So I really like that approach. Now, something that I'm unclear about. So when you started off, you talked about creating a curriculum, and you want a curriculum that's better aligned with standards and so forth. But we have a curriculum. It's not that we don't have a curriculum. We have a curriculum. So what's unclear to me is in your discussions, what did you collectively identify as things about our current curriculum that probably could be better? And that's really what you're getting at when you say design a curriculum. I don't think you mean start from scratch. I think you mean how are we going to improve what we have now? So maybe you could just highlight a few things that you think could be better and how you're going to achieve that.
Absolutely. And that's a fantastic question. Yeah, we are certainly not starting from scratch. But what we identified in the review process was inconsistencies in places where the curriculum isn't always aligned to standards first. And that's really sort of where we want to begin again, is starting with the PA ELA standards and making sure that our curriculum is aligned to those first, so that it is first and foremost a curriculum of skills, not a curriculum of strictly content, not a curriculum strictly of reading and memorizing, but of developing reading, writing, and critical thinking skills. So we did identify through the review process places where maybe that wasn't as strong as it could be. And so as we now go sort of to the drafting table to work on that, our first step is starting with standards first and identifying which standards will be taught in which places. And in a lot of ways, that is sort of counterintuitive to the way English teachers usually think. We love books. We want to talk about books. We want to teach books. We want kids to like books too. And so oftentimes the impulse is that we rush to choose a book that we want to teach. I want to teach this book because it's powerful, because it's interesting, because it's meaningful. But we need to reverse that process and instead start with what skills do our students need to be successful in their lives beyond NA? And then after we've established that, we can select the readings and materials that are the appropriate vehicle for them to practice and learn those skills. And so we have that, we feel we have that working in places. We need it working everywhere, in every grade, in every classroom, in every building in the district. We need that to be consistent. And so that is sort of where we begin. And we've already begun that work by reviewing where we are currently and starting to formulate those places that we need to improve. And so that is much of the work that will be done in the first half of next school year. And then teachers, I know the department is eagerly awaiting their chance to start picking the books that they will match with those skills and that those standards. but we're not there yet.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Ms. Hardy.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Thank you so much for this report. I really enjoyed reading it. It's lovely to see you here this evening. I had questions about aligning assessments and how, I'm not an educator, I don't know, but I'm looking forward to learning more about this. When you buy the resources for the class, doesn't it come with a series of assessments? And aren't those the assessments that the kids take? And then also, I wanted to hear a little bit about Spark and the other testing that we do at the younger levels, probably not at NAI, and how you can use that to inform, uniform assessments and what's going on with students.
I'm gonna call on some support for those, because those are. Would you mind, Kristen and Kristen? Yeah. Would you mind? To answer your first question about assessments that come with a resource, yes, that is true. What often we find though is that the resource provides so many assessments that aren't always aligned to what our specific goals are. And this has been a common theme throughout this review process, is that a resource is not a curriculum. A resource supports a curriculum. And so from that resource, we carefully select what we are going to use because it aligns with our larger goals and our larger curriculum. So in that case, there will be some things that come with resources that we will be able to use as assessments, but there will also be places where we will feel that we'll need to create our own assessment tool that's better aligned with our larger objectives. Can you speak to some of like the testing that happens at elementary or middle school?
I would say I can go STAR. Yeah. So with at middle school, I teach 8th grade, and at middle school we use the STAR data along with Study Island benchmarks, and those are consistently used amongst all 3 of the middle schools. One of the things that Jeremy's talked about consistency-wise is it's very difficult not only amongst one school, but amongst 3 middle schools. And I can only imagine with the elementary schools, it's very difficult to make sure that we're all kind of doing the same thing. And so having those standardized assessments, whether it comes from Study Island benchmarks or the STAR assignments or assessments, those really help us to dig into where the students are and what they need additional help with. The resource that we are in middle school looking for is HMH. They also have unit assessments that we will also be able to continuously use throughout the 9 weeks. Every time we come back together and reflectively look at that unit, we can say, okay, well, what were your data points? Where did you see students struggling? What skills do we need to continue to come back to? What can we kind of let off and go after, on a different place? So those standardized assessments, having that consistency across is so beneficial for us as educators to be able to not only help our students, but across the district. And so we're trying to pull as many of those resource points as we possibly can.
I can speak to the 3 to 5. So again, we also use the STAR assessment. We also use Study Island benchmarks. One of the things that Jeremy had said and also Kristen had said was that the what we are adopting is a resource and it is not the curriculum, and the curriculum is aligned to the standards. And those of us in 3 to 5 definitely, and 6 to 8 are very in tune with the standards and very in tune with what needs to be taught at each grade level. And so all of those benchmarks that we use and the STAR data, and we make sure that those are aligned and we make sure that we can identify any weaknesses or any strengths to give that correct instruction to each of the students.
Yeah, I can speak to K to 2. That we're such a big, we have to divide and conquer here. So in K to 2, we use Ames Web as our universal screener. We assess all kindergarten first graders, especially to make sure that they have their letter names, their sounds, phonemic awareness skills, and we really make sure that their early literacy is solid before we can move on. And then really, the assessments are really just a small piece, but it drives our decision making for our MTSS process of deciding which students need additional support through our win time or what I need time. So that's really the main thing. And then when it gets into the curricular piece, we have a couple different screeners that we do beyond Ames Web. So we call it sweeps in kindergarten, where they'll do every letter, name, and sound, and we can really get a more comprehensive evaluation that way. So.
And I would just underscore, if you may have noticed the trend on those three responses is that we can speak to that in K2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, but where we lack in that area is in 9 through 12. And it might be tempting to say that, oh, well, they only take the Keystone Literature exam in 10th grade, and that's the only, high stakes assessment. But that's not a reason for us not to be collecting data on our students' performance, because that's the best way we can find out whether or not our curriculum is effective in helping students learn and grow. And so we need to self-develop those tools for 9 through 12. If we're not going to bring them in from outside resources, then it's incumbent upon us to develop common assessments with common grading practices so we can have data points on our students throughout their time at NA, not just stopping after grade 8 and then sort of assuming that everything is going well. I mean, we can look at things like SAT scores and ACT scores and AP scores, but we can also be collecting our own data throughout that process to ensure that students are learning and growing at the rate we'd like them to.
Thank you so much for that. I know it's a huge job to try and instill consistency across a district the size of ours, and making sure that every Tiger gets the same skill set that they need to go forward and thrive. So really excited about that. I wanted to ask, I noticed you suggested changing the pre-AP, instigating pre-AP courses instead of honors at NAI, and I was surprised. Could you tell us more about the reasoning behind that?
Yeah. So we are instituting a new course for this coming year, 26-27. It's AP Seminar, and the College Board and PDE allow us to offer that course as a core English elective. You probably are aware. And so thinking about how we can best prepare students for that class, we looked at what College Board offers, and one of the things they offer is a pre-AP 1 and a pre-AP 2 course that is specifically designed to prepare students to take AP, if not in 10th grade, then in 11th grade. And looking at what we offer in terms of courses in the department, or comparing ourselves to other departments in the district, we only have a limited number of AP courses we can offer. It's just the nature of what College Board has and the nature of ELA as a subject area. There's a limited number of AP courses. Well, if there are a limited number of AP courses, we want to make sure that as many students who are capable of taking that course do take that course. And so we're looking at pre-AP 1 and pre-AP 2 as an opportunity to better prepare students to take AP in the hopes that they will feel more confident in doing so, and that more students will take AP. We see that as an opportunity that is we're not maximizing that opportunity for students at this time. I believe that our AP numbers in grades 11 and 12 could be higher. And we think the best way to do that is to better prepare students to take AP, so they don't feel so intimidated by the idea of, oh, AP English, that just seems, Tess is over here nodding her head. That's something that's intimidating for them, that they are, they don't feel prepared to take AP for whatever reason, or they don't feel as though they're up to the challenge. We think that better preparing them in grades 9 and 10 will hopefully increase the number of students, because we think that if they take it, they'll find that they can manage it, and that will better prepare them for college and for life after.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Dr. Gibbs.
Sorry, just one other comment. Since part of your goal, my computer is backing up. Since part of your goal is the horizontal consistency and the vertical integration, I just want to make a comment that our LMS, which is now Canvas, provides tremendous logistical support and resources to help you achieve that. So I'm hoping that as you develop this curriculum, that you keep in mind what Canvas can do for you in order to achieve those things. I've seen too many times experts developing curricula that put the LMS over here, and then they develop their curricula, and then they plug it into the LMS. The LMS is part of the solution to what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And credit to Mrs. Hudson, who recognized that early and has already had middle school teachers working on that to ensure greater consistency across our middle schools. Canvas is a great resource for that.
Anyone else? I would like to say my daughter is in one of the pilot programs for the Book Love with the free reading, and I have really enjoyed seeing her read more. And she actually, it's really nice when a teenager takes your recommendations and she reads things that I've read the last year, and so we can discuss them now. It's been great, and I'm hopeful that other students get as much out of it as my family has. You didn't mention this in the presentation, but I was wondering, can you, one of the recommendations is to look into leveling at the middle school level. And could you give us some of the key comments on, that proposal?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
We left that out of the presentation because we are evaluating. And so we haven't made a determination yet on whether or not that's something we're going to pursue. But obviously there's been a question in the district over the last few years about how do we grow our highest achievers? How do we find ways to help our top students grow each year? And so in exploring those opportunities, two things sort of come to light. One is the need for a rigorous curriculum at all grade levels. And the other is, do we look to make a move towards leveled ELA in middle school so that we can better target our highest achieving students, pushing them further to hopefully help them grow further as learners, especially on those tested areas like PSSAs and Keystones. So the research indicates that it's not a guarantee. You're not guaranteed success with leveled ELA in middle school. It has to be done intentionally and carefully. So that's why we're going to evaluate it over the next year. And then hopefully, it won't be part of a formal presentation like this, I don't believe, but we'll have a determination that we'll share with the board about whether or not we think that would be an appropriate move.
Great. I know one of the first presentations when I got on the board in December of 2019 was the English curriculum review. And I remember there being a lot of excitement over StudySync. And I noticed when in the report you talk about prioritizing continuity and effective use and over frequent adoption of new programs. But now we are recommending a new program. And so it seems kind of like, oh, you don't want to frequently adopt things, but then I suspect something maybe didn't turn out how you thought. And so how do you balance that? And can you tell me a little bit about this new resource you're looking at the middle school level?
I'm going to ask for help from Kristen Andreas here. I was only an observer in the process, but it doesn't impact me directly as I teach grades 9 and 10. So she's more familiar.
So StudySync back in 2019, especially with everything that happened in 2019 with COVID. And at that moment in time, we were talking about middle school day, and there was a possibility specifically in 8th grade, well, at all 3 grade levels, that we were going to do the double period. It didn't end up panning out that way. And so one of the things that ended up happening with StudySync, the further that we got into it with all of the chaos of COVID, we started to recognize the inconsistencies of the texts in particular that were available. Much of StudySync has excerpts, which provides a lot of difficulty for teachers because then you're spending a great deal of time building background for students to understand even what that excerpt is talking about. And so it kind of pulls away from those standards and the time that you're spending on that. This new resource that we have is very standard based and focused, and it has rigorous pieces of text. They are full pieces of text, which we are very excited about. And one of the things that we started to notice because of the inconsistencies that StudySync had was that teachers were starting to create their own materials, which when you have 3 middle schools, multiple teachers teaching multiple grade levels, it just kind of became, I don't want to say a free-for-all, but it was a little bit because teachers were trying to do whatever they could to support their kids. And so one of the things, as Jeremy has said, is that we're kind of trying to pull it back and make sure that we have that consistency so that all of our middle school students are receiving the same ensured experiences. They're hitting those skills, they're strengthening those skills. And HMH, in our opinion, what we're seeing is going to be that piece. And I'm very excited about it. We're very excited about it. Our team has been working diligently to make sure that all of our teachers are prepared and have the materials available. And again, it is very, very standard based for us to be able to use that as our resource. That's one of the biggest things that we saw with StudySync.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to review them, and I believe for anyone who might be interested, those are still available for review. And well, I'm not an educator, but I thought it looked pretty good, but I'm no expert. And let's see. And I also wanted, I know as part of this review, you went out and talked to other school districts, and you had the questions you were asking them. And I am just curious, what was the thing you were kind of most excited about that you saw at other districts and that you would like to bring back and incorporate at North Allegheny?
I think the districts that we were most impressed with have consistency. And that was the thing when we talked to the highest performing districts, or the districts left us with the best impression that they really had their stuff together. It was because there was a dedication to consistency, and really that was all the work that they did year in and year out was through the lens of making sure their ELA department was a consistent team, that a unit, as it were, that was aligned. And so as we talked to some of those higher performing districts, they were very clear about they're so intentional with their time, giving teachers time to collaboratively grade, giving teachers regular time to review curriculum and make updates, which is something that we have been inconsistent with. And that falls on me as the department head to provide that time for teachers to focus on that work. So that and talking to other school districts, it sort of reminds you that it can be done. And, we can do that. We just have to make it a priority. That, I think, was the thing that was most sort of inspiring for us, is that there are other districts who have the same struggles, but they found ways to overcome those challenges. And so we can too.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for answering all our questions in the wonderful presentation. And now we will move on to our next presentation, Dr. Hyland.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. We're moving on to the proposed final budget. So as we begin tonight's presentation on the proposed final budget, I want to start by acknowledging something we all understand. No one welcomes a tax increase. It is a reality we take seriously, and it is never a decision this board or administrative team approaches lightly. The last time the North Allegheny School District raised millage rate was in June of 2022, which is 4 years ago, while the district continued to deliver the high-quality educational experience our community expects. That reflects disciplined planning, careful prioritization, and a deep commitment to responsible stewardship of our taxpayers' resources. At the same time, we have been transparent throughout this process. We have consistently communicated that, given the financial pressures facing school districts, the need for additional revenue this year was highly likely. Tonight's recommendation is not a surprise, but the result of thoughtful, deliberate planning. Those pressures are real. They include the continued impact of inflation, the effects of the common level ratio, and the need to remain competitive in a tightening labor market to attract and retain high-quality teachers, administrators, and staff. Each of these factors places increasing demands on the district's resources. Our responsibility is not only to manage costs, but to maintain excellence. Our district has set a high standard, and our community continues to affirm that work. Over 95% of our parents and students report that they are satisfied or strongly satisfied with their experience and would recommend our schools to others. That level of confidence is something we are proud of and something we are committed to sustaining. We also recognize a simple truth. While no one likes taxes, no one wants to see a decline in the quality of teachers, administrators, facilities, programming, or staff. A strong public education system requires investment, especially in a time when costs continue to rise. We take our role as stewards of the public resources very, very seriously. Every decision reflected in this budget balances fiscal responsibility with the needs of our students and the expectations of our community. A high-quality education is one of the most important investments we can make, and it is not without cost. With that context in mind, the administration is recommending a 3.5% tax increase as part of the proposed final budget. Even with the proposed increase, North Allegheny will remain among one of the lowest tax districts in Allegheny County, and after the increase is still expected to be in the bottom 5 for an overall millage rate of the 41 comparable districts. We believe that reflects our continued fiscal discipline and our respect for the community that we serve. To provide greater detail and transparency, into how we arrived at this recommendation, I'd like to invite Mr. Kermit Hauser, who is there, our Director of Finance, to walk us through the proposed budget and the key factors that shaped our recommendation this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Hyland. And before I start out this presentation, I did want to ensure to thank the business office team, some of which are in attendance here tonight, for their hard work throughout the budgetary season and maintaining the accuracy and their fiscal stewardship of the districts, as well as the administration, the principals, executive council, controllers, and all the department chairs that helped gather the information in the proposed final budget. So going through, as we develop the proposed final budget, we do keep the district's goals in the forefront. All of these goals, not just for next year, but also for the continued success of North Allegheny. Going through the budget timeline, this is a slide that we have all seen before each time I present, and you'll notice it really is a year-long process that the business office team is working with administration, the controllers, the department chairs to pull this information on a future year's expected expenses as well as estimated revenues for a future year together to come up with a balanced budget for a following fiscal year. So that's really happening all year long. And then in November, November 12th in 2025, we did, the board was presented a preliminary estimate of where the budget would be for 26-27, and the Act 1 index resolution was passed, stating that we would not raise taxes above the index, above the Act 1 index. And we're now at April 15th, where the proposed final budget is presented, will be voted on, then it would be on display for at least 20 days prior to a final budget vote in May, which is expected to be in May, and then would be effective July 1st. So just to go through some of the budget, the proposed final budget highlights, as Dr. Hyland said, we are going to be proposing a 3.5% increase, which is 0.69 mils, and the millage rate would be 20.4309. And that is what is consistent. That is consistent is what we presented in November of what we were expecting. The annual impact of that would be $69 annually for every $100,000 in assessed value. The average residential property in the district is approximately $254,000. So it equates to $176 annually on average, or $15 a month on average. The homestead farmstead exclusion right now is an estimate, which is about $240, and that would be what would be taken off a residential homestead tax bill. That information is not available until May, so right now it's just an estimate built in. The fund balance impact after transfers is approximately $366,000 of a deficit. That is down from approximately $750,000 at the November timeframe. So we did get a little bit tighter to a balanced budget versus the November timeframe. And the expected fund balance at the end of next year is expected to be $28.1 million, or 13.3% of budget. It equates to about 1.6 of operating cash flow, 1.6 months of operating cash. So the key revenue assumptions that we utilize in the budget. This is very similar to what we do each year, and these are just the high-level key points of it. Local revenue, we really look at the assessed value rate and if a millage increase would be included or not. So in the current year, the assessed value growth rate that we're utilizing is 0.59%. That is the latest information that we have from Allegheny County. That is presented to us from Allegheny County. We were estimating it at about 1% in November. It did come in lower. The primary reason of that, as Dr. Highland mentioned, is related to the common level ratio. We are the tax increase of 3.5%. The millage impact is roughly about $4.5 million. And the other items that we utilize in the revenue, other key assumption, earned income tax, that rate stays flat. However, we are expecting about a 3.4% growth in that. And interest earnings were expected to stay flat to the prior year budget. And looking at the Fed rate, there is a potential of, they're expecting maybe one decrease in the Fed rate over the next 12 months. That could change dramatically if it goes up or down, but right now we're expecting to be relatively flat to last year's budget. State and federal revenues, a lot of those are are estimates based on run rates that we've experienced, and the state funding really won't be known until that state budget is passed and could go up or down depending on what the state decides. But we have used our best estimates based on known information for both state and federal funding. So let's see how that looks. Taking a look at the revenue, we're expecting about $210.5 million of revenue. And you'll notice 76, I believe it's 76% of that, or 75% comes from local sources. And it's primarily made up of our current real estate. And that is the primary driver of that $210 million. State revenues, you'll see that we're expecting that to increase about $800,000. As I said, those are our best estimates. The increase on that is primarily related to the increase in staffing costs, which causes an increase in reimbursement of the PSERS costs. So that state revenue is really driven by our increased expenses. And you'll notice that the federal revenue of roughly $3 million did increase just a little bit of $50,000. That's just based on our estimates. And you'll note that the federal revenue only equates to approximately 2% of our expected revenue next year. Moving on to the expenditures, the key assumptions that we utilize, salaries and benefits. Those are the biggest line items in our expenditure budget. And salaries, we really base that on our current overall staffing expectations, right? So what we do is we incorporate next year's salary scales, the expected number of FTE that are needed, and we crunch those numbers together and say, what are our expected staffing needs? And then we add the benefits on top of that with the PSERS, Social Security, et cetera. You'll note in here, there is a medical renewal that we're utilizing the 16% increase that became known in October of last year. So we incorporated that into the proposed final. We won't know next year's rate until next October, so it's still just an estimate at this time. Other services and supplies, we are still facing inflationary pressures, as well as third-party transportation increases. And we also included in our supply line item this year versus the prior year, one-time purchases of ELA and social study textbooks. And then we also look at the other financing, and that's based on our debt schedule. And we did incorporate into the proposed final budget our estimated cost of a $10 million bond offering that we are looking at to fund the initial funding of the construction. So if you look at the numbers of how that changes, again, you'll notice 76% of our expense budget is related to salary and benefits, as stated. This number actually did come down a little bit from November on the salaries, based on some retirements that were incorporated in, as well as some staffing decisions that were made based on the new contract, which the admin team really did a great job of looking at the best utilization of our staff going into next year. You'll see the medical did increase the benefits did increase 5%, or roughly the $3 million, and that was driven by the medical increase. Again, going down the line, everything is pretty tight, just really some inflationary adjustments until we get to the services and the supplies, where you see the incorporation of some additional third-party transportation costs expected, as well as some slight increase in tuition costs based on expected enrollment for next year. And then the textbooks. Something to note on the textbooks, that number did come down from the November estimate based on some negotiation from some of our administration members. So thank you very much for that work. And then you'll see a decrease, and this is an expected decrease from our debt schedule. I've shown it, the waterfall, the debt schedule starting to come down. This is the year that it starts to come down, and that does include the additional $10 million. What that does to our fund balance, as I mentioned before, the ending fund balance would be about $28.1 million, or roughly just over 7%. The unassigned would be just over 7%, and the total would be about 13.3%. Looking into our historical millage rates, as Dr. Hyland mentioned, we have not raised, we've had a constant millage rate towards the bottom of our, where the yellow line towards the bottom, and we have had 17.74 for the last 4 years, one of the lowest amongst our competitors, and actually the fourth lowest in Allegheny County versus the 41 comparable districts. We're expected to remain in the lowest 5 after all the other districts make their final decisions. We'll have that data. We'll have more information on that data. But here's that chart, as well as all the data, as well as some fast facts on that. And again, we are about 23.19% lower than the county average in millage rates right now. So the next steps after on the proposed final budget would be to vote the proposed budget in. It could then be on display for at least 20 days, and it has to be approved 30 days prior to the final vote. And then we would work on updating the proposed final budget to the final budget during that time frame. Should any additional material changes come in with estimates that are unknown at this time, or any other changes that would be needed. And then we're scheduled to adopt the final budget May 20th of 2026. And just as a reminder, there are different ways for residents for tax relief. And I included these as well as the links on there. That's the homestead credit if somebody has not applied for that, as well as the senior citizen tax relief and the property tax rebate programs. So I included those in here if people that qualify are interested in following those links and applying for those. Also to note, the proposed final budget actually is already on display, but will be included in this presentation in board docs, but will also be linked to our website by the end of the week for people to see, and that's the PDE 2028. With that, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hauser. Does anyone on the board have any questions or comments? Dr. Adams.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Thank you for the presentation and all the work. I've got a couple questions in the form of a request, and I guess the words around it. The request is, could you please look at adding a small addendum or section to visualize and set the tone and the impact of what you could do if you had no debt? The idea being that it always shows up on a pie chart as a small percentage, and everyone's used to it. Not everyone. A lot of districts, maybe all districts, and a lot of people are used to that as a small section, the debt financing. And it looks like, can you let me know, it's around 14 or 15 million in debt service, something
In net debt service, net of plan con, which is a reimbursement.
Perfect.
It was, yeah, right
Yeah.
around 14 million coming
So
down to 13.
that looks like a small slice of pie, but that's an incredible amount of money. If you were able to have that as a resource, what would you do? That's the question. And the reason why I'm asking is I think North Allegheny could be one of the most likely districts in America because of the fondness for the district, the depth of the district, the legacy and strength of academics, athletics, and arts, to potentially raise a legacy fund, multi-$100 million fund, to change the narrative going into a very interesting time for education, economy, society, and raise the fund. But if somebody doesn't sit down and make a couple slides or a vision and make the official request to the North Allegheny Foundation, to others in the community, what if we were to change the entire scope of how districts run, make our own fund? For example, large universities like Stanford University can do incredible things like pay for tuition for freshmen because they have created a giant fund. It requires some very wealthy people in the community to care enough, and many others to want to help at lower levels. And because you're heading into a building campaign, you're uniquely situated to cast that vision, plant that seed, make that request. It doesn't hurt to ask. And so I thought if you could highlight that or consider that, it might be helpful to just kindly suggest, ask, and think, to say, you know, school districts may find themselves in difficult times. There could be uncertainties in job markets. What if we establish strength? Because debt is struggle and weakness, even though it always drags along on a small piece of the pie chart. Hopefully it stays small. But having a fund like that would be strength and open opportunity. And the question is, what would you do if you had that money? And if you can cast that vision, that would be, I think, helpful for making the request.
Okay. Yep. That's something we can pull together.
Yeah, thanks.
Anyone else? No one else? All right. Oh, Mr. Weniger.
I think there is a question or an argument could be made theoretically about not perhaps raising taxes and eating into some of our fund balance. But could you perhaps, and I know we've talked about this before in some of the other presentations, but just reiterate again for the public of why it's important to not erode and use that fund balance, especially in light of the building campaign that we want to embark on.
Yep. So it's actually twofold. So first, threefold. So the first one is the fund balance is used. There's 1.6 months worth of operating cash flow, right, in our fund balance. And based on the timing of cash flow, we don't receive the majority of our funds until September. So when you go into the new year, you have July and August and early September that you have to carry cash for your operations, right? So having 1.6 months in that time frame of cash or fund balance on hand prevents us from going out with for a TAN or additional debt to cover our operations, cover payroll, which then you would be paying more in interest on. So that's one reason, right? Another reason would be when you are going out for debt, as the current plans show that we are in the future, having a strong fund balance and not eating into that actually improves your or either maintains or improves a credit score, which North Allegheny carries a AA stable rating, which is a very strong rating for a school district. And that carrying that type of rating lowers the interest that you would pay on said additional debt going out, right? So actually keeping that fund balance or a strong fund balance or even growing that actually lowers your debt costs and will lower your future expenses. So that's a second reason. The third reason, when you look out into the future and you project into the future, expenses typically go up about 3% a year, 2 to 3% a year. And if you start a gap between your revenue and expenses, and there's a limit to how much you can raise your current the current real estate millage rate is only to an index of roughly 3.5%, or sometimes lower, sometimes a little bit higher. you won't be able to close that gap. So not only are you recognizing a loss in the current year, a drawdown of your fund balance, you're basically doing it every future year, even after raising taxes, because you'll never be able to catch up until the growth outweighs the growth in assessed value outweighs the increase in expenses. So those are the three main reasons why we wouldn't want to do that.
Excellent question, Mr. Weniger. And I know when our auditor was here in November, they were talking about the importance of the recommendation is to have a 2-month in your fund balance. And I'd also like to point out that we will not have the numbers that the state is going to have before we pass this budget. And sometimes the state does not pass the budget on time. And we're fortunate to be a district that does have a fund balance, because some districts, when that state money doesn't come in, they do have to go out for that. What is that, a TAN, temporary?
Tax
Yeah.
anticipation note, yes.
Mhm. So that has really helped us a lot. And I know other districts have been really hurt by that when the state doesn't pass the budget on time. Does anyone else have any comments? Yes, Dr. Gibbs.
So thank you for the report. Very nice report as usual. So it's been mentioned a couple times that the decrease in the common level ratio is one of the things that has hurt us with respect to revenue. Do you have any information about that, whether it will continue to decrease, whether it might increase? Any information?
So it's not expected to increase. It'll continue to decrease each year. Not as dramatic as what it was. The decrease is leveled off. If you recall, it dropped from 84% to 51% over a very short period of time, which caused a lot of appeals from a lot of property owners and commercial property owners, which caused dramatic drops in the assessed value. The decline is expected to continue. That 51% is expected to still continue to go down, just from the way the common level ratio works and what it's meant for. But not as dramatic as what it has in the past few years. So I hope that answers your question.
Anyone else? I will also wanted to make a comment on, you mentioned how we're tied to the index. Other local government authorities can raise taxes by amounts, by percentages much higher than we can, but we are limited by that index. So they, we can't wait 10 years and then do a huge tax increase to avoid having to bite the bullet, while other, like the Allegheny County can, I believe they raised taxes by like 36% last year. We are limited by that index. So we're limited to around a 3.5% whenever we want to raise them.
Correct.
And if there's no, and I will just also say, I really would like to echo Dr. Hyland's comments. I think he put it very well. It has been since 2022 when we raised the millage. That was 4 years ago, and our costs are rising just like everyone else's. And I appreciate all the work that our administrative team has done to be fiscally responsible, to put us in the position where we haven't had to raise taxes for 4 years. And we've only had to raise them once during my first 6 years on the board. So I'm really grateful as a homeowner and as a board member for that gift you have given us. And none of us on this side of the table want to raise the millage rate, but having a high quality schools benefits our students and our community. So it's something that I am willing to invest in, and I will be a yes on the proposed budget tonight. And now we can move on to the rest of our board folder. Mrs. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. I move to amend Section J of the agenda to include item number 8, the approval of settlement agreements.
I'll second. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, we're ready for a voice vote.
All in favor of amending the agenda to add Section J, item number 8?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries.
Excellent. All right, so now we will move on to speakers on voting items. We do not have any pre-registered speakers this evening, but if anyone would like to address a concern on a voting item only, I know there's some people who are signed up for other items at the end of the agenda. But if you would like to speak on a voting item, now is your opportunity to come to the podium. I do not see anyone interested, so then we will move on to our approval of the minutes. Ms. Harvey.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. This evening, the board has 2 items for board action to approve the minutes for the March 11th and March 25th board meetings, and I so move.
Second.
Any questions or comments? We are ready for the vote.
The vote is open.
I'm an aye. It's asking me to log in again.
The vote is closed. The item passes unanimously.
Okay, now we will move on to our student activities report. Unfortunately, it looks like Ms. Jin was not able to join us this evening, but Ms. Pagnato, can you give us the NASH activities update?
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Earlier this month, senior class officers wrapped up their final sale of prom tickets and built excitement for the big night by organizing table reservations and continuing the future plans Instagram post highlighting where seniors are headed to NA. Now, with after prom just days away, the anticipation is high as everyone prepares for the Golden Hour Gala at the Convention Center on April 18th. Wishing for clear skies and an unforgettable night, safe night, all the senior class will celebrate together. Additionally, the North Allegheny Tigers are the 2026 Pennsylvania Speech and Debate champions. The team delivers an incredible performance at the championship tournament with 33 out of 48 competitors advancing to the elimination rounds and ultimately securing the large schools division title, breaking Upper St. Clair's 4-year streak. NA also earned the Speech and Debate Congress Sweepstakes Award, placed second in public address, and highlighting the team's strength across all events. Looking ahead, 27 students have qualified for the NCLF Grand National Tournament in May, and 17 have qualified for the NSDA National Championships. 6 students will represent NA at the International Public Policy Forum World Finals in New York City, while 9 will compete independently at the University of Kentucky Tournament of Champions in April. Best of luck to all of our debaters as they continue an already outstanding season. And then I'm going to highlight some of NAI. And in April, NAI will host their very first Student Wellness Day, led by Tiger Strong Live Long Committee. This special day is designed for recharging, learning new skills, and supporting mental well-being. Freshmen will participate in 2 sessions, a food sampling session and an activity session, where they can choose a fun activity such as bracelet making or basketball. Sophomores can attend a guest speaker session focused on the importance of mental health. In addition, plans for 8th grade move-up day are well underway. Led by Dr. Maines, Matthew Collins, and the student representative, the goal is to involve as many NAI students as possible. Students can volunteer as tour guides, leading groups of 8th graders around the building, participate in the Q&A session, or represent their clubs in the club fair. This year, student enthusiasm has been overwhelming, with over 300 students signing up to be tour guides alone. NAI is looking forward to an exciting and more engaging move-up day. Finally, this year's NAI This Is Us event will be organized by a group of dedicated student leaders. They have planned many fun activities, including games, food, and a photo booth. The team is currently working with PTSO to secure a dunk tape, aiming to make this year's event the best one yet.
Thank you, Ms. Pagnato, for doing double duty tonight. Next, we move on to Mrs. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. I just wanted to highlight Best Buddies if I could.
Absolutely.
I think that it is one of the greatest groups that we have and clubs that we have. It's a game changer. I've always said that teachers are the ones who can change children's lives forever. They are so important and provide the children in America with the education they need to go on and do whatever they want. And Best Buddies, I feel, actually made my son realize he wanted to become a teacher. I think that, working with children is something that changed his life, and that group does great work. So I noticed that they were in here and had a wonderful open mic event, and I just want to recommend it to anyone who wanted to get involved with that group. It's a great group. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Blackburn. Ms. Weidman.
Just because I saw it up on the board, I wanted to indicate that the reason Miss Jin is not here tonight is that she is participating with the TSA state competition. So that was also on her summary today.
We wish her well at the competition. And now we can move on to Ms. Hardy and the curriculum report.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. This evening, there are 10 items for board action and 1 item for information only in the curriculum report. Board action items include an agreement with Indiana University of Pennsylvania for student teachers, approval of next year's middle school musical, Matilda Jr., approval for students to participate in the FCC LA National Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C., approval for speech and debate trip to go to Washington, D.C. for the National Catholic Forensics League tournament, an approval for the speech and debate trip to New York for the International Public Policy Forum World Finals, approval for students to attend the PMEA All-State Choir Festival in Pocono Manor, and approval for students to attend the PMEA All-State Band Festival in Pocono Manor, waivers of board policy number 241 for the choir and band trips, and an MOU with the NA Federation of Teachers for the summer PE course. And I so move.
Second.
Any questions or comments on these items? All right, seeing none, we are ready for the vote. Ms. Hardy, your information item?
Yes, the information only item includes details on student teacher requests in the district next school year. Thanks, Mrs. Warner.
Thank you.
And the vote is open. The vote has closed and all items have passed 8-1, 1 nay.
Okay. Is it possible to display those just so the community can see? It seems like at one point we were able to do that.
Yeah, the
Oh, there we
score-
go.
There it is.
Okay, all right. Next, we have Mr. Weniger and the finance report.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Tonight, there are 4 items for board action. They are the Grable Foundation grant, which is just allowing us to accept a grant of up to $70,000, which is pretty great. The student expenditures for February 2026, the accounts payable list, and the 2026-27 proposed final budget that we got to learn quite a bit about from Mr. Hauser's presentation earlier. And I so move.
Second, although I'll be voting no on item number 4, but aye on everything else.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Blackburn. Does anyone else have any questions or comments on the finance report? Or would anyone else need to pull out one of those items? Or vote differently on one of those items? Okay, I do have one comment. I would like to thank Dr. Hibner for her work on getting that Grable Foundation grant. We are really impressed. Thank you. And we are ready for the vote.
The vote is open.
And while we're voting, there are 2 information-only items, and they are the ending cash balance through March 31st and the 25-26 March forecast, which is still holding generally in line with previous months.
The vote has closed and all items pass. I take that back. Items 1 through 3 passed unanimously. Item 4 is 8-1 with Mrs. Blackburn voting no.
Thank you, Mrs. Weidman. Next, we have Dr. Gibbs and the Human Resources Report.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. There are 10 items for board action this month. The first is the appointment of Heather Hibner as our new assistant superintendent for secondary. I'll have a couple comments in a moment. The second is also another important appointment as a new hire. This is Kelly McKean, will be hired as our new a new position of Coordinator of Special Education, Gifted Education. Third item is resignations. Fourth is wage and status changes. Fifth are supplemental contracts. Sixth is recognition for additional education. Seventh are appointments. 8 are honorary and club activities. 9 are leaves of absence. And 10 is tuition reimbursement for additional education. And I so move.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Dr. Gibbs, I know you had some.
Yeah, so I just want to say, so that I think the two biggest items in this folder are, one, the appointment of Heather Hibner, who is currently our principal at NAI, to the new position of Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education. So I'll speak on behalf of the board. People can speak for themselves, but I'll say that I think we're all very excited to have Dr. Hibner join us in this new capacity, and we're looking forward to her service there. And then the other big item, of course, is the new hire, the appointment of Kelly McKean to the position of Coordinator of Special Education, Gifted Education. She comes to us with a lot of experience in that area. And again, I think the board is very excited to be able to add her to our team. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we are ready for the vote.
Vote is open. There we go. Okay. The vote is closed and all items passed unanimously.
Congratulations to both of you. It was a thrill to interview you guys earlier this week. The way you answered our question was impressive. We are so thrilled to welcome you to your new role and to the district. If either of you would like to come to the podium and say a few words, you are welcome to. Dr. Hibner, I'll put you on the spot first if you're interested.
I wanted to say thank you for an incredibly robust interview process. It was very intimidating, but it was amazing, and I'm completely honored to shift into this new position and to continue to serve the district. Thank you.
Ms. McKean, are you interested in saying a few words?
Just wanted to say thank you. This has been an incredible experience for myself and such a learning opportunity. And I am dedicated and cannot wait to get in there and just start supporting families and students and staff. So thank you again for this amazing opportunity. And I'm excited to be a part of the NA family. So thank you.
And I would like to thank, I see many members of the student services team here to support and many members of the secondary team here to support. And so it is nice to see that family atmosphere in this room this evening to welcome you to North Allegheny. And now we can move on to the property and supplies report. Ms. Light.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. We have one item for board action. The Bear Family YMCA swim team fee waiver. I so move.
Second.
Any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, we are ready for the vote.
The vote is open. The vote is closed and the item passes unanimously.
Then we will move on to Mrs. Blackburn and the student services report.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. This evening, we have 8 items for board action. The Evolve Coaching Memorandum of Understanding, Services Agreement between North Allegheny School District and Glade Run Lutheran Services, Bradley Center Agreement for Educational Services, Western PA School for the Deaf, Special Education Plan Renewed Agreement with Special Education Transportation Agreement with Parents for 25-26, approval of settlement agreements, and I so move all items.
Second.
Any questions or comments on these items? Seeing none, we're ready for the vote.
Vote is open. The vote has closed. All items pass unanimously.
Okay, next we have the Technology Services Report. Dr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. This week we have one item for board action. We seek approval for the summer 2026 technology equipment refresh, and I so move.
Second. Any questions or comment? Oh, Dr. Adams.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. Dr. Shaw, I had a question, suggestion, request on this one that came up just looking at the equipment. I wanted to ask and suggest that the support staff looking at the MacBook Neo laptops, it looks like the count's 485, is that correct?
I believe so.
And perhaps you want to direct my question, but the question is going to be, and the suggestion is going to be, can we look and would you please look at talking to some of the support staff to see if they could find a number of somewhere between 10 and 100 substitutions to get the new Mac Minis, because from what I understand, you can share the desktop and then tie this in with the AI kind of study group, the AI research we're doing as far as how that's going to affect education. We're in the middle of a revolution right now, specifically with software like OpenClaw. You can run it nicely on Mac Minis and simulate an entire education, how to streamline an entire school district and run in a very interesting self-contained way on Mac Minis. It's very good at that. And you could have a dual use case for these Mac Minis if you didn't spend all the money for the support staff on new laptops. And if they had any kind of Mac laptop, from what I understand, you can actually share the desktop headless so the little Mac Mini can be on the counter and you can log in with another laptop and utilize the services there. Also check on how it's running while you're asleep, doing its AI work, creating files, moving things around. Somebody might be very happy to try this. So I wanted to suggest that some discussion be had on that topic, specifically Mac Mini, OpenClaw, headless use and sharing the desktop remotely, or even in the room. You just log in on the network. It could be very useful for many things, for an AI challenge and also efficiency. So I wanted to suggest, request, and drop that in there, please. Yeah.
Fair. Mr. Cox, do you mind commenting on some of this?
Sure. I'll address the question first. The Mac Mini, or I'm sorry, the Mac Minis were not requested because we are trying to reduce the footprint that our staff currently has now. And the reason being is if we have to go to flexible instruction days, we would like a device that the paraprofessionals could take that have a camera that's integrated into it that they can use for virtual instruction. We are also, when that number of support staff is listed on for the counts, we made up a fictitious classification of paraprofessionals. We called them front office. Those are the folks that would be running the front desks that have dual monitors, and they would be getting Mac Airs. And the reason being is because their processor can handle dual monitors, whereas the Neo can only handle one. So we did a comprehensive study on making sure we did what was in best financial interest, but also providing those staff members with a device that could keep up with the pace. As far as the pace with AI, the Mac Neo was a very late entry into our options. And we actually gave it to some folks on our staff, my staff, to run it through the rigors. And we are creating AI-based videos with high intensity processing capabilities. And they were able to accomplish that task without much lag, even on the Mac Neo. And the Mac Neo's price point is right on. And so that was the thought behind going with the Mac Neos for that subset of employees.
Okay, thank you. Two things came up from that answer. One, I forgot to mention something you can do here is download open source models and have them run self-contained and then modify them. You could make your own North Allegheny English department AI and train it and then modify it and have it running on a Mac Mini self-contained with OpenClaw and then interact with it. That's number one. Number two, I forgot to clarify my suggestion financially, and that is if you could find some volunteers, this is the idea, that would stick with whatever laptop they have. There are a lot of laptops, like as a board member, I am very disappointed with this laptop that I was assigned. I think it's from 2009. It's not very good, but it has a camera, it logs in, it needs to be plugged in every 30 minutes. It does its job. It's not a very good laptop. So if there were some volunteers that wanted to keep the laptop they had so that you could utilize some of those funds for some Mac Minis, I think there's a lot you could do with that and still be able to have remote day access.
Mac Minis are very inexpensive also. So they are nice, but we have started to integrate those into the labs since they're easy to, you don't have to buy a monitor every time you refresh. They are definitely make some sense. In this use case, we were sticking to that. I'm open to taking a look at some of those suggestions moving forward.
Perfect.
Especially as the AI task force moves on. We are meeting quite often, and we are coming to the point where we're going to start making some recommendations and getting folks to kind of be pioneers in those areas here in the next couple of months.
Glad to hear it. Thank you.
And Dr. Shaw, too, you'd asked me to make a quick statement on it and why Mac, why now? And just for the sake of transparency, AI data centers are buying up and consuming all of the chips that are in a lot of the computers right now, especially PCs. Apple holds a very unique position where they have their own factories that they make their own chipset, so they are not under those same constraints. So this year, for the first time ever, Mac was even in our sites, and those prices every month, our vendors are telling us the PC pricing is going up 20-30%. We are also, in addition to Dr. Adams's point, our students are feeling the same pain that you are. The quality of the PC laptops we're getting at the price point that we've been doing the last couple of years is downright shameful. And it was time to get a computer that the students deserved, the teachers deserved, and they kind of all lined up. We did have some observations and feedback from students and staff. Biggest one that I have is AP exams. Last year, our student laptops could not even make it through one exam. We had to buy charging blocks. We had to do Christmas vacation with wiring and plugs inside of plugs. We have faculty meetings where they have to bring out towers to keep devices charged through a 30-minute meeting. And it was time for us to consider other options. And then the late runner of the MacBook Neo coming in, it made the switch attainable. And I am really excited for tonight's recommendation for two main reasons. First and foremost, we're able to provide our ninth grade students and our staff with a device that meets their expectations. They told us what they didn't like in the survey. They didn't like the build quality. They didn't like the battery life. They didn't like the constant crashes. And I think we checked those boxes. But I think another, for transparency with taxpayers and in front of the board, if you look back to 2022 when we did our last teacher-student refresh, we spent around $3 million. This refresh came in at $2.4 million. We did buy more devices. We bought some PC labs. However, for the most part, and Mr. Hauser can chime in if he's helped me along the way, we are relatively cost neutral, even given that much time frame with inflationary cost increases. We were able to remain pretty much cost neutral and get a very much upgraded product for our students and staff to use.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I won't put Ms. Pagnato on the spot, but I will point out that it doesn't look like you're using your district laptop. I imagine there's a reason for that. And I am on my fourth child has already gotten her last device from the district, but I am glad that future students will benefit because I have certainly heard a lot about the quality of the laptops and the battery life in particular. So thank you for doing the deep dive and being willing to look at something different this year because I think it was going to be a great improvement for our students. And I don't believe there's any more comments, so we're ready for the vote.
The vote is open. The vote has closed. The item passes unanimously.
Okay, next, the superintendent's report. Dr. Highland.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Warner. For board consideration this month, we have 12 items. And first, let me say again, and I know I do this periodically, thank you very much for the board members, looking at the policies and trying to move these through. There's an awful lot of policies and we are ripping through them. And so it's much appreciated, all the time and effort that you put into it. The first thing is professional seminars, professional development. The following are second read and adoptions: policy 207, policy 209.2, policy 215, policy 216, policy 216.1, policy 217, policy 218, policy 218.1, policy 218.2, and policy 221, with a retirement of policy 204.1.
I will move those items.
Second.
People are shy tonight. Does anyone have any questions or comments on the superintendent's report? If you are going to thank us, Dr. Highland, I think we also need to thank Ms. Weidman for all the work she does on these policies and making them, putting them all together and presenting them in a way that we can see the proposed changes and deletions and all of that work. I know there's a lot behind the scenes that you are doing to make that process so much easier for us as board members. And I believe we are ready for the vote.
The vote is open.
While the board is voting, we have 9 for information only items. Policy first reads for the following policies: policy 224, policy 229, policy 230, policy 235, policy 239, policy 249, policy 250, policy 140, and policy 619.
The vote closed. All items passed unanimously.
Thank you, Ms. Weidman. Next, we will move on to special reports by the board. Our legal counsel submits an electronic report. And then we have Mrs. Blackburn with our Citizens Advisory Committee and A.W. Beatty Career Center.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. The Citizens Advisory Committee will be meeting in May, so no report there. A.W. Beatty Career Center, our Skills USA and FCC LA groups, the members attended state competitions, did very well, earning different medals, and we will be getting fuller reports on those at our next meeting, which is actually tomorrow. So we'll have more information then, but nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Blackburn. Next, Mrs. Thays with the North Allegheny Foundation report and the legislative report.
Thank you, Mrs. Warner. One thing for the North Allegheny Foundation, the Taste of NA is coming up in May 21st. Tickets are available online to purchase and opportunity to become an event sponsor. It should be a great evening. In terms of the legislative report, since last month's update, the General Assembly has been largely in recess, but is now returning into session with the House back as of April 13th and the Senate scheduled to return April 20th. As lawmakers resume work, attention is expected to intensify around the state budget and education policy priorities, particularly as the June 30 budget deadline approaches. The House Education Committee has begun holding informal meetings on emerging topics that could shape future legislation. This week, the committee is examining educational tax credit programs, and later this month, we'll convene a session focused on the role of artificial intelligence in K-12 education, an area that may lead to future policy proposals. In addition, there is an increasing statewide advocacy around the 2026-27 budget. The Pennsylvania School Board Association is encouraging districts to adopt resolutions calling for an on-time state budget that prioritizes public education funding. This advocacy effort is grounded in newly released data showing a widening gap between mandated school costs, such as pensions, special education, and charter tuition, and state funding.
Thank you, Mrs. Thays. So now we will move on to our speakers on non-voting items. This is the opportunity for people in the audience to speak on any topic. It is not an opportunity for back and forth discussion. And we will start with our pre-registered speakers. Our first pair of speakers who have 5 minutes are Salem Elawonini and Ethan McCombs.
Hello, I am Ethan McCombs.
And I am Salem Elwanoni.
We are freshmen at NAI, and we would like to thank you for your service on the board and for listening to us speak tonight.
All of us are here today because we care about safeguarding the bright future of our students and community. While we laud North Allegheny's excellence in academics, athletics, and inclusion, one area has been overlooked. It is essential for the well-being of the many students, staff, administration, and community members that the district continually works to lessen its environmental impacts. Over 15 years ago, the Initiative for Enhanced Environmental Awareness was created, and the district outlines several plans, such as purchasing locally sourced food and increasing recycling. We are 15 and have confirmed with an NAI custodian that our school still does not have an effective recycling system. It is time to review and reroute. We all want students to learn in healthy spaces. The positive impacts of green schools undeniably align with the district's strategic and comprehensive plan. Green schools empower students by helping them be part of the solutions. Green schools are inclusive and make learning comfortable all year round. Green schools are by definition facilities of the future, especially with the exciting prospect of upcoming renovations and constructions. There is no better time than the present to make policy promoting environmentally responsible facilities and education.
With that being said, it would be naive to expect such a sudden transformation. Instead, with the gradual implementation of policies and programs throughout the district would facilitate the way and through education and exposure. Used crayon drives, battery recycling, and rain barrels are learning opportunities that should be encouraged and celebrated. Other factors should be scrutinized, such as limiting bus idling time, the quality and quantity of green spaces, not using the most environmentally friendly energy conservation policies, not using the passive house standard, the materials used for renovation as well as sanitation, and setting aside budget to experience with innovations. We tentatively suggest in the curriculum that schools start to incorporate more classes about the environment, like classes such as something called environmental studies, which could allow students to learn about recycling, picking up litter, plant life, and more. We need to inform people on these things so they can form core values about the environment, so they know what they should and shouldn't do to help the environment stay alive and be sustainable. Especially in elementary school, we need a class where students can really learn about the environment. Because in elementary school, students take in approximately 90% of their learning abilities. Now, we don't expect an instant class to be made, but we do suggest it enthusiastically. I know it is hard to make a new class completely, but there are many sites where you can find lesson plans and other appropriate things to help with the environment, such as science buddies. I myself absolutely adore plants and have ever since I was a child. And I would hate to see our district not support the environment as well as it could.
We understand why the environmental impacts of the district might not be at the top of your to-do list. The trial and error, upfront costs, and potential backlash could outweigh the benefits. But in the long run, it matters. It matters to you that you show us your try. It matters that the upfront costs will dissipate into savings. And it matters that such valuable buildings lead the way for the future we will inherit. We plan to get more in-depth in future meetings, but for now we ask for the adoption of an energy conservation policy, a stronger focus on environmental education, and the allocation of funds for experimenting with new innovations. Green schools are like trees. The best time to plant them was 15 years ago, but the second best time is today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you both. We have one more pre-registered speaker this evening. Brian Ludwig, you may come to the podium and speak for up to 2 minutes. I assume you pre-registered. Okay, excellent. Okay.
Hello, my name is Brian Ludwig, a 2001 North Allegheny School graduate alumni from this district, and McCandless resident. And starting off, it's generally understood that the school bus drivers and the transportation department have an important responsibility in getting students to school safely and to their homes, as well as to their other destinations. And that having been said, every morning the transportation department safely carries hundreds of North Allegheny students to the classrooms where their learning begins. My concern tonight, however, is about flexible instruction days. When the district calls an FID, flexible instruction day, school is still considered in session. Teachers teach, students learn, and the district counts it as a full instructional day. But for the transportation department, those same days are treated like unpaid snow days. Bus drivers appear to be the only group in the district not being paid on these days, even though the transportation budget was already allocated for this full school year. Paying drivers for flexible instruction days would not create a new expense for the district. It would simply use funds that were already budgeted. Bus drivers receive no pay unless we use one of our 2 personal days for the entire school year. Days many drivers rely on for medical appointments or family emergencies. We are told the contract treats these days like snow days, but flexible instruction days did not exist when most of that language was written. These are not snow days, for school is still happening. The district often speaks about the difficulty of recruiting and retaining and retraining bus drivers. Policies like unpaid flexible
20
instruction
seconds.
days make that challenge even harder. When school is considered in session for students and staff, it is difficult to understand why the people responsible for getting those students to school every other day are treated as if school is canceled. I respectfully ask the board to review this policy and consider whether this is truly the outcome the district intends. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak for up to 2 minutes on any topic? Okay. Seeing none. Are there any announcements or reminders from anyone on the board? Dr. Gibbs?
Yes, I just want to mention that the next meeting of the Student Health and Wellness Advisory Committee will take place on Wednesday, a week from today at 6 o'clock in this room. This will be the last meeting for this school year. Mr. Mergen has generously agreed to come and speak to us about transportation and all of the factors that go into ensuring the safety of our students as they are transported from their homes to school and back. So I encourage it. This is an open meeting. Anyone who's interested in student health and wellness and this topic, you're welcome to join us at 6 o'clock next Wednesday evening.
Thank you, Dr. Gibbs. Anyone else? Then we are adjourned.